How's it going, everyone? I hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome back to another Web Dev Junkie video. In this one, I'm going to be showing you how to build out this pricing page. So this is a design that I found on another site, and I wanted to try to replicate it using Tailwind CSS, just so I can kind of learn Tailwind and get a better understanding of how it works. So this site looks pretty slick. I mean, my design skills aren't that great, but it looks pretty good to my eyes. So we are going to try to replicate this. I did replace some stuff, so I'm not like blatantly copywriting them, but so we got a cool little header up here. We got a title, we got a 3-column pricing section, and then we got some information down here with like 2 columns, and then finally a footer. So we're going to try to replicate this. And if you are new to Tailwind, this video is probably going to be a good introduction. I'm going to kind of walk you through all the different things that I'm doing. And yeah, hopefully you can learn a lot from this video. So if you're interested in watching that, be sure to stick around. So let me just go ahead and give you an overview of my project setup. So I'm starting with a really bare bones index file, and I did include a Google Web Font already. And we have a body that has a container class. So nothing too extravagant there, but the main thing is I'm importing a Tailwind CSS file. So how did this get created? Well, if I go to my package.json, you can see here, let me minimize this because we don't really need that. But you can see I have a script that you can run called build Tailwind. And all it does is just run the Tailwind CSS CLI, and it kind of outputs a Tailwind CSS file that we can use. So after you clone the project or get set up, you run this in your terminal. That'll generate a complete build of Tailwind CSS, and I'm just importing it here. And that will give you access to all the Tailwind classes that you may need when you're using it. Now, sometimes you want to customize your configuration in Tailwind, so I did go ahead and add a Tailwind config file. So let's just go ahead and look into that. So in this file, I did define a couple of things that we're going to need. Basically, what you can do in this file is overwrite any of the existing Tailwind classes, or you can kind of extend them and add on new functionality. So an example is we wanted to add that Google Web Font as a Garamond here. So if you basically just do theme and then you provide a font family, that'll define what fonts you have on your application. And then secondly, you can kind of extend existing features in Tailwind. So I wanted to include a background image that we have, which we can just access it using bg-bg as a class, and I'll show you that in a second. And then finally, a z-index, which we're going to be needing both of these to kind of make that cool background color. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm not going to do any responsive design in this. It's going to be really basic, and hopefully you can get a good overview of how this works. So starting off, I'm wrapping the body in a container because that'll keep everything at a certain width, right? If you don't add the container, basically your page is going to expand as big as the monitor resolution is. And that's can be good and can be bad. It's bad if you have a huge monitor and you don't want your divs and everything to be spread off across the page. So we'll put it in a container. And the first thing we're going to start off with is try to include that background image. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a div and add a class of bg-bg. So remember, the bg-bg class is something that we extended in our package config, our Tailwind config, I mean. So you see here, background image bg-bg. So the key you put here is going to allow you to be called this. So I could have named this whatever I wanted to. I could say my cool colors. And if I save that and rebuild my Tailwind using that npm script that I showed you, I could access it like that. So bg-my cool colors. And that'll just basically apply the background to that div. But we don't want to do that because I already kind of built my Tailwind class. So, all right, so hopefully you can actually start seeing stuff on the page, So let's just add a width of, I think it's screen. And that should expand the image to the full width of the screen. And then I can also do height of screen, and that should expand the background image to the height of the screen. So you see over here, it looks pretty good. The next thing I want to do is I want to make this fixed so that as I scroll, it's going to stay on the page. And at this point, we could probably add some z-index, but I'll show you why we need it in a second. So let's move on to the header. So if I have 3 images here, A, B, and C, just to kind of show you what we're building out. So we need a header to start with. So let's just go ahead and try to build that out. So I'm going to say header, and we want to use probably flex so that we can make it go a left and a right side. So for the icon, let me just do an icon really quick. So I'll do a div and I'll just put like a smiley face for now, but I can find some type of ASCII emoji for you in a second. And then secondly, what we want is a couple of links. So y obtuse pricing and convert. So AY obtuse. And then was it pricing and convert? All right, so you notice that as the page loads, the background image is getting put on top. So that is why we added that other extended Z index here. So I could do Z of -10, which doesn't come default in Tailwind. So basically just put Z of negative Z of 10 on that background so that it doesn't overwrite my body elements. All right, so let's just continue on. So we also have two buttons. We have a login button and a sign up button. Let's try to make two buttons here. We'll do button log in and then a sign up. Was sign up 2 words? Yeah, it was. Okay, so let's try to style out this header using Tailwind. So first of all, the header, we probably want to use flex. So if I give it a class of flex, that should allow us to kind of push this div with the smiley face to the left and this div to the right. So you do need to know about CSS and Flexbox to use Tailwind. So just look up a Flexbox tutorial. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to justify between, which will push this div to the left and this div to the right, I believe. So there you can see it, we have a smiley face. It's super small, so let's go ahead and increase the size of that. So I'm going to say class of text 4XL, and that'll increase the text size of the smiley face. And you can use different numbers here. You could do like 1XL, you could do 9XL, 8XL. But for our logo, maybe 4XL is good. And we probably should find a different ASCII for that. Let me see if I can find a better logo. All right, so I found one over here. Let's just go ahead and use that. And that could be our logo. It's a little bit different from what the image was, but it's no big deal. So also what we could do is probably add some either margin to the header or some padding to the top of the header so that it brings everything down some, because right now it's kind of hugging the top a little bit too much. So probably on the header I'll say margin top of 4, and that should bring it down a little bit. In fact, maybe I shouldn't do margin top. Maybe I could do padding top, because that looked like that messed up the image. Let's do that. The padding top of 8 looks a little bit better. And then also the bear looks like we need to bring it in some, and also the buttons from the right. So we could do padding left and padding right of maybe 8 to bring those in. And that already looks a little bit better than what it did before. So going back to the image again, these could probably be increased in size. Our text is a little bit smaller. And then we could start adding the buttons. So first of all, on this div, let's just add a class of text of, let's try XL and see how that looks. And I think that looks pretty good. Secondly, on all of these, we obviously want to add some type of class to it. So I'm going to say class, and just keep it empty for right now. But for all of these, we're going to say margin right of 4 to add a little bit of space in between the links and the buttons. So for the login button, let us just go ahead and add a border. So in Tailwind, you could just type in border, and that should add a border. You can kind of see it there, but it's kind of grayed out. So I'm going to say border black to make it black. And then also we probably want some padding. So I could say padding of 2 and see how that looks. That looks pretty good, but I think there's more padding on the left and right. So I'm going to say padding left of 4, padding right of 4. And that looks pretty good too. One thing I didn't mention, if you have VS Code and you have the Tailwind extension, you can basically type the start of whatever you want. And you see that we get a ton of suggestions of what to use. So if you feel like you have to memorize all these, don't worry about memorizing them, because you can just use a IntelliSense to kind of help you out. And at this point, both these buttons should kind of be identical. So let's just go ahead and do this. I think I'm missing a double quote, so let's add one. Okay, so for the sign up button, we actually want that to be black instead of a white background. So we could do BG black. BG, I typed that wrong. And do I need to zoom in this a little bit? Maybe so. I think that's good. All right, so we made the background color black, but also the text should probably be white so we can actually read what we're looking at. So going back, that looks pretty good, I think. And just to kind of give you another little overview of how you can do like hover effects in Tailwind, there is like a property you can do, hover colon. If you wanted to maybe change the text color as you hover over, you could just say hover text, and then what color do you want to make that? Let's just try red to kind of demonstrate that. You know what? It's because I'm on this mobile view, so I probably need to get out of mobile view so we can actually see it. So actually, let's just get out of mobile view because that's probably going to be a better way to test this. So that's how you can do hover effects. You just add the hover colon in front of whatever you want. And as you do those actions, they will change and apply the styles or the classes for you. So that's pretty cool. But I mean, for right now, we don't really need the hover effect. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so one thing you might notice about this, the buttons, is that they aren't pushed against the right of the page. And I think it's because I added a container to the body. Maybe we don't want to use a container in this instance. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that container just so it can push all the way to the right. A little disclaimer, I am still learning Tailwind, so there's a lot of classes that I don't fully understand, and I haven't actually learned Flexbox that well, so I need to actually learn it. But I am doing the best I can with what I know, just so I can make some videos for y'all. Alright, so I think this looks pretty good. Again, we're not going to do responsive, but you can add responsive selectors to things as the screen gets wider if you want to. So let's move on to the next part. So that is the title here that says pricing. So under the header, let's just add a section, and inside that section we could add pricing. I don't think it's all caps. Let's see. I think pricing. And the thing about this one is we actually want to center this. So a class that you can do in Tailwind is called text center. And that'll put it in the center of whatever element, parent element that you have. And I'm going to max out the text size here. So I'm going to say 9XL. I believe that's the max you can do unless you define some custom stuff. And that looks pretty good. So let's just go ahead and add some margin. I don't know if 40 is a real value. Let's actually go back. 48. 48 looks pretty good. And then now we can apply that font family that we kind of imported earlier. Remember we imported one in the Tailwind config called Garamond. So to use that, I could just say font-Garamond, and that will apply it to the text that's in that section element. So at this point, I mean, it looks pretty good. Let us go ahead and move on to these three little pricing sections. So let's add another section down here, and we could probably just do, again, Flexbox to make 3 equal columns. So let's just do that. So in here, we could say, if I'm going to do some emit and say 3 times div, oops, div times 3, I mean, make 3 divs. And those divs are going to have empty classes for right now, but, you know, I'll put like A, B, and C so that we can see them show up on the page. And then if we want to make 3 columns, one approach is to use either Flexbox, or you could use like maybe Tailwind's grid. I'm just going to use Flexbox again. So I'll just say class of flex, and that'll put them directly next to each other. But we also want to either grow them all. So I could say flex 1 on all these, I believe, to grow them. Let's see, flex 1. All right, so that'll evenly space them out on the page. And now what we could do is maybe add some margin bottom 48 to that pricing to kind of push those down. And we might have to come back and use a different class for the flex if this doesn't work out. Flex grow basically just allows the child component to grow as much as it possibly can. So going back to the image, we have 3 columns and they're both different colors. So let's just try to color all of these. So I could do BG white to give it a background color of white. It's hard to see, but it is white down here. Probably zoom in a little bit. See, that's white. And then for the middle one, I could say BG purple of 300 or 400 and see how that looks. And that looks pretty close. Maybe 300 might be better. And then the last column, BG black. And there we have it. We have 3 columns. Now, one thing you'll notice is that there were margins on the left and the right of the columns. So on the section itself, we could probably say like padding left of 4 and padding right of 4, just to bring it in. Maybe 8 might be a little bit better. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's just go ahead and start just filling out the first one. So they all start with, this one starts with starter. So inside of this text, I'm going to make another div. And I'm just going to say text of, let's do XL. And then we can say starter. And that looks pretty good. I don't know what the other one should be, but I don't think it should be starter as well. So let's do text XL of that one. I'll say novice. We're just making stuff up here. And then the last one could be like pro. because you always want like a pro account to be the most expensive. The one thing you'll notice about that last column is that the text isn't even visible. So let's just make the text white on that last column. And then you'll also notice that in the image, oh, my head wasn't blocking that. I need to get used to I got to remember that my face blocks some of this. In that image, we could probably increase the font size a little bit, make it bold, and then also center it. So let's just go ahead and center all these. So I can say text center and apply it to the section, and that should center all those. And then I could probably add some like bold to all these. So font bold. Maybe medium might be better than bold. Let's try medium instead. All right, that looks pretty good. So there's also some padding, maybe 8 pixels of padding or 8 rim of padding. So inside of each container that we have, let's just add some padding to the top. So I'll say PT of 8 and see if that looks good. And I think it looks pretty good. Let's just add padding to the bottom as well of 8, just so it's consistent. All right, so we need to then add another thing that says free and then some money values. So for each of these, I'm going to make this one text, I think it's called heavy. We'll do bold for right now, we can come back. So this one's free, and then the other one's like $15, and this one's like $25. And then the text size should probably be a lot larger. So I'm going to say text of 4XL, see how that looks? You know what, that doesn't look that good. So let's try 7XL, 6XL. I think that looks pretty good. I think there's another text we can use. Instead of bold, we could do, or sorry, it should be font bold, not text bold. Let's try font bold and see how that looks. That looks okay, but I think there's another one that's even darker. I could do font black. That looks good. Let me rename those from text to font. That's my bad. So that looks closer to what we're trying to build. And then we probably want to add some margin to the top of all these titles here. So let's just, on the front of all these, I could say margin bottom of 4. Just add a little bit of spacing, and that looks pretty good. And then secondly, we could add some margin bottom of 4 to that as well. And then underneath this, it just says no credit card required, no trial period. I'm not going to actually do the text identical just to save some time for you all. So no credit card required. And that needs to be a smaller text. So I'm going to say text of MD. And I think they also have it gray. So here I could probably just add like text of gray. And then maybe do 400 and see how that looks. That looks pretty good. And then also says no trial period. So let's just go ahead and add like a line break here. Say no trial period. Cool. So just to save you all time, I'm just going to copy and paste this. And that one looks good, except for the purple one probably needs to be a little bit darker gray so you can read it. Accessibility is really important when you're choosing colors. All right, so let's move on to image B here. And basically the next section just has a bunch of these like top level keywords that kind of explain what you're going to get. So the first one says like build a website. So let's just go ahead and add a div here and say build a website. And then also has publish to obtuse.design. So publish to obtuse.design. All right. So in order to get these to look more like the image, we could probably give that section, let me close that at A because we're done with A. I could give that section like a fixed width or a fixed height of something like 96. So let's just say class is equal to height of 96. And that'll kind of expand it to a fixed rim. And what we could do is actually increase the font size of those. So I could say font or text 2XL. Maybe that's too big. I'll say 1XL, or just XL. How about that? So that looks pretty good. And then we could probably also center these. So if we were to make this div flex and then make sure that the direction is flex column, we could then justify everything in the center. So I could say justify center, and that'll push it all to the center. And then we could probably add some space between all of these. So I wonder if I could say like, I wonder if I say justify space, how would that look? Oh. All right, I'll do center and see how this looks, and then I'll just add some margin bottom to all of these. Looks pretty good. I think there's also font bold on these. Let's try font medium. Looks pretty good. All right, so we're going to copy this, and we're going to just paste it down here and just pretend like we have some more things. So we got like fast page load, SSL. What else do we have? Code export, design to code, code export, design to code. I'm just kind of ad-libbing right now just to save you all some time. But if I were to put that margin bottom to all these, oops, let's do that. That'll put some space in between all of them. And the Pro plan has the exact same style as that. So let's just copy that in for the Pro plan. So far, it's looking pretty good. The last section is we have some sign up for obtuse buttons. So let's just go ahead and add those sign up buttons. I could basically copy a button that we have up here. Let's just grab this one. And at the bottom of all that, I'm going to put sign up for obtuse. There you have it. You have the button. I think it should look good white on the novice, but on the black one, we're going to have to change some stuff. We're going to have to make it white. So the text of white. And then we also need the background to be white as well, or the border to be white. So we'll say border white. And there you have it. The purple button looks a little hard to read. So instead of border, I guess it looks okay. I'm wondering if a white would look better, but that's pretty good. All right, let's just move on to the next section. So really we just have 2 columns now with just some information, and I might just find some lorem ipsum to kind of just fill in those informations. So down here, let's add another section, and let's be sure to add some margin to the section that we just had here. So I could say margin bottom is 32. And inside of this section, again, we're going to have 2 divs. And inside of this div will be our left column. This will be our right column. And to get that to flow correctly, we could probably just add a class of flex to this. So class of flex. And we might need to add flex of 1 to these so they grow. So class of flex of 1. So for these, we can basically just add some titles and say like, what is obtuse? And then we could add some text. So let's go over here to lorem ipsum. Generate some stuff. Well, that's not generated, that's just copied straight out, but that's fine. We just copy that out and see how it looks. All right, so that doesn't look too bad. Let's just go ahead and copy this and do it one more time so we have a couple of headings. All right, so let's style this. So for the H1, we obviously want it to be a text of, or font of bold probably. And then for the text size, we could probably apply it to the entire section. There's a text of 4XL. Let's see how that looks. That's too big. We'll do 2XL. So that looks better. And one thing you can do to increase the spacing between your words or your lines is you can do leading of loose. And I put it on the wrong thing. I meant to put it on, let's put it on the entire section. All right, so that'll spread out the lines and make it look a little bit better. And let's apply the same class to the other headers here, which makes it look a little bit better. And then for the paragraphs, let's just add some margin bottom to it. Let's say like 4, just to space it out. Okay, 4 is not good. Let's do 8. All right, that looks a little bit better. I think our headers are bigger. I'll do font black on those. I think that looks a little bit better. All right, so now at this point, if we could just copy and paste all this stuff that we have, and if you're using like React or something, you could just abstract these and abstract them into components and they'll look a little bit better. But if you do that, and maybe just reduce some of the ipsum on some of these, just to kind of have some variation, you'll see that this is what we get. Let's just delete some of this stuff as well. So it's a little crowded, so maybe we should add some padding on the left and the right. So padding right 8, padding left 8. Save that. And then inside, like right in the middle of the column, we could probably add some padding right of 4. That looks a little whack. Let's do padding right of 8. And on this one, we could say padding left of 8. Cool. So that looks pretty good. Let's move on to the last section, which I'm probably hiding on my head. But you can see here, we have, we move over here. It's just basically a footer that has a couple of things in it. So let's just try to build that out. All right, so let's add another section. So section, let me scroll up so you can see the code. And for this section, we are going to add 4 columns. So to achieve 4 columns, again, you could just say display of flex, and then we could just have 4 divs like that. And then they could all have the class of flex of 1. So for all those, if we look at the image really quick, the left side just says obtuse. And I'm running out of time. I'm sure my kid's going to wake up soon, so I'm just going to kind of do this real quick. The second column is going to say why obtuse. What else does it say? Pricing and convert. Pricing and that convert. You know, instead of, we might want to use divs for all these, just so we can kind of apply whatever styles instead of breaks. So I'll do that. I'll add that into a div. And I'll add that onto a div. This onto a div. Need to figure out a better way to do that. And I'm just going to copy and paste those. We can kind of go down and look at them. So first of all, we probably want a lot more margin between the sections. So on this section, I'm going to say margin bottom of 32. To bring it down. And then finally, with this text, it's really small. So I'm going to say text of extra large and see if that helps. I'll do 2XL. And then also we probably want to add either some loose leading so that there's more line height between these, or I could just add some margin bottom to all these divs. So let's see what the leading of loose looks like. And that looks pretty good. And then what I like to do is just add some arbitrary margin to the bottom of the footer, just so that you can kind of scroll down and have a little bit of space here. So it's not exactly what the image looks like, but I could just change some stuff like Twitter, get in touch, face, I'll do that. How about that? Oh, get in touch, 3 words. And for the middle column, it says, what's new, public roadmap and blog. Public roadmap and what's new. And then finally, I would think some padding on the left would probably make this better. So on the section itself, I'll say padding left 8, padding right of 8. And that'll kind of bring it in a little bit from the edges. Technically, I could have just added padding to the entire body and not have to worry about adding padding to every section. But sometimes you never know if there's like a section that you need to have like a full horizontal banner and the padding would mess it up. So it's sometimes better just to add padding to the individual sections itself. All right, there you have it. So this is a fully functional, well, not really functional, but it's a fully styled pricing page built with Tailwind CSS and just basic HTML. I hope my webcam wasn't blocking some of the code during this video. I sometimes forget that I have my webcam on and I forget to scroll my code up. But if it is, it's okay, because I'm sure I'm not going to get that many people to watch this anyway. But if you like this tutorial, be sure to subscribe and like and leave a comment. If you have any suggestions of how I could do stuff better, like, for example, instead of doing 2 columns, I know I could have done like, I could do like width of -1/2 if I wanted to be exactly 1/2 of the width. And that might have been a better approach than Flex 1, but I think they both kind of achieved the same thing, so that's good. What else could I have done better? Oh yeah, and in terms of adding responsive, like right now, if I were to scale this, let me go to mobile view. If I scale this up, you don't need to watch my code anymore, do you? I think it'll look pretty good as you scale. But at some point, it's going to get too big and just look kind of crazy. So I think that is one reason why you might want to add a container. You see how it's just kind of wide? So if I go back to the code, and instead of, I'll just put the entire thing on a container here. So I'll say container, and I'll just wrap everything inside a container and see how that looks. So now as I widen it, it doesn't just expand to all the way to the side. Now, one thing you could do with the container is I could do MX Auto on it just to center it. And now if I look at it, that actually looks a lot better than it did before, okay? In fact, let me just full screen this and see how this looks. For like 16 pixels. Zoom 100%. Oh, I guess you can't. Let me zoom out more. How's that look? All right, so as you get to a large monitor, you can see that the background is kind of messed up. So you might have to spend some time fixing that. I'm sure it's not that hard to do. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this little tutorial. If you wanted to take this a step further, try to figure out how to add responsive Tailwind styles to this so that maybe as you scale down, this doesn't look all jumbled. These are put onto new lines, and these are put onto new lines. It's pretty easy to do. You just add like SM colon or MD colon in front of your components to change the style. But yeah, all right. Thanks for watching. Happy coding.